I was asked to ask people to move in a bit because in case latecomers come in, they can squeeze in. But
I have to be closer to you.
oh, wonderful. Okay, great. Well, what a day it's been.
Do you need to?
Everyone can start. Ready?
She's talking to me, not you. Cause
Wait. We're going to start, so everyone can hear your mics. Okay, we're ready to start. My name's Clem, Sandison. I work with the Land Workers Alliance in Scotland, and I'm also a community organiser in Glasgow, where I work with marginalised communities, particularly women who are trapped in the asylum system, and support access to land and knowledge exchange and mutual aid networks. And I'm really delighted to be facilitating this panel this evening on feminism and agroecology, which is really big and daunting and also amazing and joyful, and we've had such an incredible day today. I've been at so many inspiring talks with bandana in the morning, and just it's sort of awe-inspiring to be here with these amazing panelists. And before we sort of properly kick off with introductions, everyone's going to introduce themselves. I just wanted to say that one of the things that seems to be coming up again and again in all of the talks is this idea of centering life and centering care, and that the reproduction of life and learning from the soil and the more than human world is so relevant to both feminism and agroecology. It's about life and valuing that and finding equity for all life. And that was what was really hitting me today in so many of the talks. And I was thinking that maybe something else that feminism and agroecology have in common is an invitation to unlearn mastery. The idea of challenging and resisting narratives of domination and subordination, and you know, mastery over Mother Earth, mastery over women's bodies. All of these things all are so interconnected and intertwined with our struggles against capitalism and colonialism and patriarchy. So just going to set the scene broadly there, just a little start. So I invited all of the panelists to bring an object with them as a way of sort of embodying our relationship to the land. So I'll start, since I asked everyone else to do it. And I've brought my grandmother's fruit picking basket. She was a pastry chef in the US, and she was always harvesting berries, and this got passed down to my mother, and it just is a sign for me of all the love and care that went into food in my life. And both my grandmother and my mother died pretty young, but I feel like this basket is important to me because it helps me carry on a tradition of foraging and harvesting. And I live in the city, so I don't have that much access to my own land, but I look after a community food forest in the East End of Glasgow, and it's a space that's really an experiment in commoning, and the idea of trying to create a valuable commons for everybody and being able to value nature and wildlife just as much as the cultivated fruit and nuts that we grow there. And yeah, so that's why I brought this basket, and it's also been part of a sort of deep listening experience of even on a small patch of urban land, how you can really reconnect and heal your body with plants. And yeah, so I brought elderberry vinegar as well that we made from the fruit in the forest. So would anyone like to go next with their introduction and their object? Anyone want to go first? I'm just going to look at you. Okay, go for it.
Hi, I'm Sasha. I was invited here by Clem to provide a gender marginalised voice in this discussion about feminism, which I'm sure we kind of all know is not just about women, but it's about all of us. I am a hedge layer, primarily, so I brought my billhook. Which no, my billhook. I brought my billhook because for me, it's when I started out on the land, which was only about four years ago. I came from a kind of politics and philosophy background. The look of something like this would have scared the shit out of me, and it did when I first saw it. And the only other thing that scares me more than this, or scared me more than this, would have been a chainsaw, which I now also use, but I didn't bring with me. Yeah. And I brought it because it's integral to the work that I do, but also because using it makes me feel strong and capable and empowered. And I think it's just so important to reclaim these, well, or even claim, I don't know whether reclaim is even the right word, but to claim these kinds of tools as non-male people and use them and feel strong and capable of doing that. And that's kind of, yeah, what I hope to do with my life, is to help other people feel empowered on the land. And I also grow food and co-run a community growing space. I'm also very nervous and the microphone is shaking a lot. And yeah, the other thing which I think is quite important is that I just recently, with a friend of mine within the LWA, the Land Workers Alliance, started a group called Women and Gender Marginalised People in Forestry and on the Land, which is a group for land workers and in particular foresters to basically get together and talk about issues pertaining to the patriarchy and toxic masculinity and the like. So yeah, and that's kind of me.
Do you want to go next, Sandra? Oh, your mic.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, sorry. Greetings, everybody, greetings. So my name is Sandra Salazar. I'm a farmer, horticulturist, community horticulturist from London. I'm a founder of a social enterprise called Go Grow With Love. We focus on mainly supporting and teaching melanin-rich women, that's women of African Caribbean heritage, to return back to the land. What we do is we practice skills development in land cultivation. At first I said land cultivation, but actually I changed it now. As from 2 days ago, I call it land care. So land care, no more cultivation, we're gonna care for the land, add on to it rather than take away. And we also develop skills in food growing, obviously, and appropriate food growing. And what's the next one? Sorry, I'm very nervous as well. And enterprise, sorry, an enterprise. So we have a allotment in Enfield, London, where we practice this. We call it Women Leading with the Land Farm. We are also called the Soil Sisters, may I? So this is us. You want to see it? Soil Sisters. So, and this represents as above, so below. It represents as above, so below. It kind of goes deep into the whole, what happens above us in the cosmos is the same thing that happens below us underneath the soil. So we practically, what we do, not practically, but what we do, we honor that is beneath the soil, that is beneath, not beneath the soil, beneath the land. Basically, all those beautiful micro life that make up this massive macro life that we reside in. I forgot to say, actually, sorry. I'm here with my Nana, so I'd like to give thanks to all my ancestors and those before me that made way for me to be here now talking to you. I'm here, so that's Nana. That's Nana's cloth. I never actually met her, but that's my Nana. And she goes everywhere with me. Whenever someone says, bring something, I'm like, all right, come on, Nana. And here we have some seeds that are falling. And these seeds are from a pumpkin that's called Mama Selma. And Mama Selma is very dear to me. She's not just a pumpkin, actually. She's a real person, and she's here. And I will point at her. She's over there, the young lady with a hat on. And Mama Selma means the world to me. I met Mama Selma 2 years ago at the land, and I believe that was the universe that brought us together, because she has been such a I won't even say a person, but she has been someone in my life that makes me get up every day and be a good person, just to see how she operates in her life. She's been farming since she was 4 years old. I watch her very carefully, the way that she farms as well, and I take my notes. So she's my mentor, and above all, she's my mama. And, you know, I absolutely adore her, and I believe in intergenerational, I believe in growing with love, and she reminds me of that, so she means a lot to me. And so I'm here, I was invited to come here and share my story as a mum, as a woman, as an African sister, as a firewoman, because I have a lot of fire in me, and as a community horticulturist, to come and share my story over the past 12 years since I left the Babylon, the retail world, and came into the land world. And that's my mission, so thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks, Sandra. Selma, do you want to do just a brief introduction with your object?
Yes.
And we'll come back to you with more.
I'm Selma, and I'm from the Global Women's Strike. And we began as a Wages for Housework campaign, and now the campaign keeps us going, and we call ourselves the Global Women's Strike for various reasons, but it's the same thing. We want an income for women who do work without wages, which keeps the world going, which reproduces the entire human race, and they say we're not working. We celebrate our 50th anniversary this year. It's coming to a close. It's almost 51 years. And I'm a very political person, very anti-capitalist, anti-racist, clearly anti-sexist, and anxious to change the world. And I think agriculture is an important part of changing the world from women's point of view, which is the best and really fundamentally, when it comes down to it, the leading point of view. And what I brought is a picture of a Palestinian woman hugging a tree. And I can't read, if you can read this for me, or maybe...
Yeah, okay. So it says, Palestinian woman cries as she hugs one of the olive tree, hurted by Israeli army in the West Bank village of Salem.
I am a Jewish woman, and therefore I am anti-Zionist to the core. I'm against everything they do, including thinking that they have a right to be in Palestinian land. I'm a member of the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network, and I work very hard at this. And now the United Nations has thought that that the Court of Justice, the International Court of Justice, should look into the killings. 50 children were killed this year. I think it's 50 children were killed this year, and they are our children. All children are our children. All children deserve our protection as adults. That's what we're here for, to protect our children. And that's an important part of what I stand for. I have to say something else. My father was a peasant, and he was an immigrant to the United States, and when you went out with him, if a horse came by, he would stop it and open its mouth and tell me how old he was and all the things about him that he knew as a child and had no contact any longer being in the United States. But he made it absolutely clear that this was a crucial and deep part of his life. And I have found that the work that people do in agriculture, particularly in Andhra Pradesh right now, which is a massive women's movement of many thousands, almost 1 million, women who are in self-help groups, changing the world for all of us and helping to stop global warming is a crucial part of what I stand for and what I do. That's it.
Is that working? No. To you next, Lynn.
How do you follow that?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm giving you the hard job.
All of you, you know, it was one of those things whenever at the start, Clem, you're like, who wants to go first? You kind of go, oh, no, not me. And then you're like, damn it. I wish I went first.
What did you bring?
Yes.
What did you bring?
So I bought my bottle of San Pellegrino. No, I didn't really. I'll introduce... I brought my chainsaw. No, I didn't bring that either. I'll introduce myself first. So my name is Lynn. I am the co-owner of Limbrett Croft, which is a small farm, 150-acre small farm in the Cairngorms of Scotland. I farm with my partner, Sandra. I'm also the co-author of a book called Our Wild Farming Life, which is available here today through Chelsea Green. I had to say that. I'm going to move on. Our Wild Farming Life. Chelsea Green. So I didn't bring San Pellegrino. I bought this little item. So Clem had asked us to bring something, and you know when you start overthinking something and you think, what am I going to bring? What am I going to bring? You know, I can't fit Highland Cow in my bag. I've only got hand luggage. You know, what shall I bring? And I kind of grabbed this on the way out. So I don't know if those of you at the back can see it, but this is a tiny little tea light. And it's made from beeswax, and it was made by me from bees that I care for with my partner Sandra. So bees that work in our landscape to, you know, pollinate, you know, trees and wildflowers. They then make this incredible, just amazing nectar-rich honey, which we bottle or cut into comb and we sell to our community. So they provide this incredible food source. We then take the wax and we melt it down and we make it into these candles, and really for me it's a really kind of tangible object that represents so much. It represents so much about the beauty of farming with nature, about the wonderful, you know, diverse things that are, you know, the life that we work with produces. And then I sort of like the concept of what the candle itself does. It's sort of something that really kind of, I think, strongly reflects life, and that it gives out light, it gives out joy, it gives out beauty to the world. And the other amazing thing about beeswax candles, I don't know if you know this or not, but they actually purify air. So for me, this is just sort of pure joy, pure love, and pure air. So that's what I brought today.
That was a pretty good choice of object.
Thank you. Yeah.
Very well.
A Highland Cow would have been better.
Yeah, that would have been nice. And last but not least, Bridget.
That's all right. So I'm Bridget Murphy. I came over from Sligo in Ireland. It's on the west coast of Ireland. And no more than Lynn, I was really sitting thinking, what could I bring? That would have had me arrested at airport security. The seeds would have been confiscated. I really sat there and I was kind of thinking, what could I bring? What could I bring? So I brought a carving of an acorn. And, you know, when I was looking at this, I was kind of thinking, all right, I mean, no more than myself, there's a whole lived experience, there's a whole story behind this. It was a tree. At some point in time, it was cut down. Somebody carved it. It's ended up in my space now. But there's that whole other side to it, you know, the fact that it is a seed, that it contains a blueprint for something, for leaves and branches and trunks and roots and exudates and processes and photosynthesis. There's just an incredible amount kind of stored in this. There's furniture, there's ink, there's just an incredible amount of stuff that is actually stored in this. But no more than any of us, we all have potential, but without opportunities, without supports, it will always just forever kind of be stuck, or perhaps kind of like literally in a nutshell. But But I was kind of looking at this because I was never a farmer to start with. I've been farming for the last 22 years up a mountain. I was telling Lynn, I sat in the audience today and listened to her story. And, you know, she mentioned we weren't going to do poverty and hardship, and I thought I should have figured that one out. She said, didn't do sheep because they insisted on trying to kill themselves. I said, yep. Wish I'd figured that one out too. But hill sheep, you know, I mean, it's a hill farm. There's not much you can do when you're up on really what's called high nature value land. But it was the start of this most amazing adventure. I fell into farming completely by accident. You can hear from my peachy accent, it's not exactly a South African, I mean, an Irish accent. I was born in South Africa to Irish parents, and grew up in South Africa. My parents returned to Ireland to look after great uncles on this farm, but I stayed on. I did my law degree, and in the mid 1980s, at the time, the last ditch kind of like holding on of apartheid, and joined the anti-apartheid movement, but ended up deciding to go and take my law degree and work with the poorest of the poor in the middle of nowhere, people who lived on the land. People who couldn't read and write, I was telling Lynn, but knew more than I would ever know in a lifetime. And it's been an amazing experience. I mean, I learned a huge amount about people's link to the land, people's love to the land, people's, you know, the fact that land is way more than a commodity, it's way more than even just something we farm on. And no more than this acorn and the tree that it grows into. It just has so many aspects of value, and we only choose sometimes to value one or two of them. And so then I came over to visit my parents because seriously, they've got 5 daughters. I always thought 4 out of 5 was a pretty good average for dutiful daughters, and having one that was a little bit of the black sheep wasn't a bad thing. And unfortunately, my dad got cancer, and I said to him I'd stay until he got better, and he never did. And that was over 20. Well, he died in 2005, so I went farming up a mountain. But I inherited this incredibly beautiful piece of land. I mean, it really is beautiful. But there was no road, no house, no electricity. Actually, like seriously, nothing but this really aged-out old flock. And I'm in transition at the moment. I've gotten rid of the sheep finally. I mean, I think it took me nearly 2 decades to figure out I wasn't going to make my living off 75 sheep. And I've converted over to bees. I'm looking at organic wildflower seeds and agroecology. And I finally stepped out and had to kind of go back into the world of employment. So I joined a farm organization, Talamh Beo, which would be the Irish equivalent. It means the living land. And it would be sort of the Irish equivalent of the Land Workers Alliance. And we pitched for one of these European Innovation Partnership projects, and we designed a project around soil biodiversity, which took 16 farmers from all different places around the country, all different soil types. Wonderfully, actually, I think the only gender balanced as well kind of project. We had half men farmers, half women farmers. And basically, we've learned about the soil biology under our feet. And by the time we finish our course, we will be trained technicians for being able to assess, you know, our own soils. It's been an incredible kind of journey. But I think that, again, start with the soil, a seed and soil, and we can change the world. You know?
Thank you. So I've got a dilemma. That was just the introductions, and that's half an hour in, so that's going well. So we'll kick off with a question that I'll pose it to Selma first, and then maybe people can chip in with responses, and we'll try and just flow and weave all our different ideas and experiences together. With all your experience, Selma, and all the decades of amazing work building this movement, what are some of the pressing challenges still facing women today, and where do you see the intersection between feminist struggles and the agroecology movement? How do those two things connect? And just give us some of your perspective in a fairly brief way, if possible.
As brief as I can. I woke up this morning remembering something that I had learnt as a child, and that was which oriented me for the day, and that was that there was a strike. I think it was in Philadelphia. I was born in the U.S., and the women went on strike. I don't know what kind of a factory it was. I must have been a small child. And the wives of the men who owned the factory came on the picket line with the women. And they referred to it as the fur coat brigade. And they won the strike because the men couldn't go against them. They would have trouble at home. And I realized that I was remembering a level of unity among women that we don't often have and that we must build. I'm not saying that the head of the oil companies are going to come and walk with us when we're trying to shut them down. I don't expect that. But I do expect a lot more support from women who have gone up in the world because of the women's movement, but do not always stand with us or even mention that they're on our side. I don't think, for example, that we can say they've supported the nurses on strike. And the nurses really represent all of us because they're carers. And that's what women's work is most of the time in the world, especially at the grassroots. We are carers. And most of the time, we don't get any money for it. And we're in a difficult position, which I'll mention in a moment. But the important thing is that if women are out there saying, I have to go to food banks to eat and to feed my family, and they're working flat out for us to keep us alive, and sometimes they fail. We know that in the last days about the hundreds who are dying every week. And you don't support them, then why have you taken a position as a woman in the establishment? You do nothing for us, and we protest about your not being on our side. I think that's, first of all, terribly important to change. We have to ask them where they stand in relation to the lives that we are living, and whether they're for us or whether they're for the men who pay them and who keep them in their positions. I find it's difficult, but you know, there are so many, I mean, this conference is so full of the capacity of women to do all kinds of things, to do the soil, to do the society, to eat, to all of the really great movements are passing through this conference. And I think with this kind of energy and this kind of imagination and this kind of organization, we should be able to get more from them, and that's part of what we must do. I want to say about the care income, because I pulled a boner yesterday, which is bothering me, and the best way to satisfy myself is to confess. I said that if women were working in sweatshops, some of the money that they are owed for the caring work that they do can be part of their wage. And I said to myself after that I was a bit insane, because if we had a care income, we wouldn't have any sweatshops. We'd have money enough to turn down the jobs which don't give us the rate for the work. And that's an urgent part of what we must have a care income to protect us from. So that's a part of where I stand. And I feel that we are carers, and the Andhra Pradesh women, almost 1 million of them, and expecting to be millions, have said, have made it their business to organize to such a degree, with such power, with such clarity, without the divisions that we often see among us, that, we have a right to, we have a basis for an international movement, which, by the way, I didn't say in my introduction, is what we have, what I have been trying, what I have been involved in, and what all women are welcome to be part of, and all men are welcome to be supportive of, and to work with us. We have payday men. And our organization internationally has, first of all, women of color in the Global Women's Strike, the English Collective of Prostitutes, and Us Pros, and a massive organization of sex workers in Thailand. What are the, oh, Queer Strike, a tremendously important organization where all women are welcome who identify as women and who would like to be part of Queer Strike is welcome. And by the way, the important work of the income, the care income, is precisely if you take care of people, or if you take care of the soil, of the land, of the natural world. Caring is one job that every gender is able to be part of, and every gender should be paid to do this crucial work of saving the planet and saving ourselves, and beginning to build a society where people and our welfare is central rather than marginal to the profit-making and the war-making that we have been surrounded with. So can I leave it at that?
I'm thinking I might go to Sasha next with just a question about the forestry sector, and being a fairly young person trying to go into the forestry sector, and some of the work you've been doing with sort of member-led organising in LWA. What has that been like, and how are you trying to tackle toxic masculinity or patriarchy, particularly within a land-based work that's quite dominated in forestry? Do you want to maybe comment on that, and how you relate to feminist struggles in that way?
Is the question? Hold on. Sorry.
Wait, she's speaking now. So.
Oh no, you're speaking to someone else. I beg your pardon.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
So sorry.
No, that's okay. No worries. Okay, so I think what happened basically with this group that emerged was that we were at a gathering that was held by the Land Workers Alliance for the forestry sector. And there were quite a few women there, actually, and queer people who, which I wasn't expecting. I was actually really scared of going, because I was like, oh, it's just going to be a bunch of you know, men being all like blah. And so I was quite...
Being all what, sorry?
I'm not going to repeat that. So I was really nervous, and I was like, oh, maybe I won't go, blah, blah, blah. And I went, and it was great. And there was so many different people there, and it was amazing. But one of the things that was still prevalent amongst all the different people there who weren't the men was that within our industry, it is just so male dominated, and the men who dominate the industry are also typically a particular kind of man, which, you know, there is a lot of toxic masculinity. There's a lot of men trying to be strong men, and not much there's not much space given for care for each other and processes of how to do things in a way which might be more gentle, safe, thoughtful. And these are typically things that are not associated with masculinity. So the group emerged just in response to that, was just kind of like a matter of a bunch of women and queer people in the field just kind of having a bit of a bitch about like how crap it can be sometimes to be, you know, the only one who might say something about a safety hazard, or like, you know, about having a period in the middle of the forest or in a hedge, you know, and like what that means and like how it can be really difficult, blah, blah, blah. So what happened was that we decided to take the conversation outside of that space and open it to other people who weren't there. And there was quite a lot of interest, and it turns out that there are loads of people who are struggling like way more than me. Personally, because I identify as, well, I don't know what I identify as. That's a journey. That's a personal journey that I'm still going on. But I don't identify as a woman, and I don't present femininely. And that is a great advantage to me, it turns out, which I didn't realize in this industry. It's got its pros and cons, because I'm still subject to a lot of sexism, and it's kind of really weird when you don't identify as a woman, but you still get like sexism because you're still biologically a woman, and it's like just really confusing, and that's a different thing. But that's why it's really important to have different experiences of discrimination and stuff at the table, because it's different for everyone involved, and obviously there are so many different iterations of it. But yeah, lots of feminine presenting women were really, really experiencing like ridiculous amounts of objectification. Like men making comments at them holding a chainsaw, like, oh, it's sexy, like, or something, you know, like that kind of stuff. Like really stuff that I thought, wow, like that can't still be happening, you know? And like, oh, you have to prove in a job interview that you're able to pick up this log because you have to be strong, and like a woman clearly can't do that kind of work. And like this real stuff which is still happening. And so I guess like the group that emerged in response to that, which I think just in itself, the emergence of that group is a really important response to the issues that we're seeing, because that kind of solidarity of like different people experiencing this same problem and having a space to talk about it is really important. And we're kind of in early days, so we haven't really done that much apart from talk yet. But you know, there's a need and a desire to get women-led and queer-led spaces specifically situated in forestry and forestry. To do things like skill sharing, because one of the biggest problems is that a lot of the knowledge is kind of guarded by, you know, straight middle-aged white men, and we want to have the information and put our like lens on it as well, because we can provide something different to what the dominant kind of patriarchal perspective has provided. Like we can give back to, we can use our diverse perspectives to really do something differently, you know? And instead of feeling like we have to fit into a patriarchal way of doing something, we can take the power and be like, we're going to do it differently, and that's okay. And like, if we're all together and we're doing it together, then we have the strength to do that. And that's what's important. I think it's about getting people in spaces like this and like sharing ideas and sharing experiences and figuring out how to do things differently. And that's kind of what we're going towards, but we haven't really done yet. So, yeah, wish us luck.
Would anyone like to go next and riff on anything that's been heard already, just around, it's feminist, how you're bringing feminist perspectives into the work you're doing in agroecology, or how the kinds of work that you're doing around that?
You want me to go?
Yeah,
why not? What was the question? I'm joking. So the kind of work that we do on the land as women. Okay, so I guess my story started with the children. So I'm a community horticulturist, and when I became a mum 12 years ago, I went on a journey to become healthier and have my baby be a healthy baby, you know. Right. I didn't want my baby's first words to be Mac the rest. So that's how my journey began. I went on to a nursery, and I joined in the parents and toddlers, he was 6 months, parents and children's group. And I met this wonderful, wonderful woman. Some of you may know or may not know. She runs an organization called Living Under One Sun in London. Her name is Layla, and she took me in, and she taught me the way of the land, so to speak, and then. From that, moving on 10 years on the line, working in schools and working in nurseries and teaching the babies and the toddlers and eat soil and all sorts of different things. We created a green curriculum. So we were doing really, really well. And I noticed that the children, over the years, the children were very excited about the things that they grew. And, you know, they will eat in the garden. You can't leave them loose because they eat everything. So this notion that children don't eat green, that's a lie. They do. They eat a lot of green. You just have to stop. No, don't eat that green. It might kill you. But they do. They get really excited about things like soil, about the environment, about seeing a squirrel on a tree. Sometimes we will come to the garden, and I made this one mistake, and that was my first and last time, actually, we had sunflower heads. And we thought, okay, we leave the sunflower heads on a table in the garden, and let's go, go to the canteen and get something to eat quickly. I came back and I saw a lot of squirrels on the table and birds. And I was like, oh, I felt like, what's that?
Snow White.
Yeah. I was like, wow, Snow White. I didn't click. They ate all the seeds in half an hour. So we had no sunflower seeds left. And the children loved it. You know, to them it was like, a story. But I'm saying all that to say that the children definitely have a lot of enthusiasm, and they're willing to learn. I recall asking them, and some of you may know, may not know, where this food come from. And I didn't think nothing of it. It's just a simple question. Where does food come from? Until the children started to say, Miss, the food comes from the freezer, or the fruit from the fridge, or from the cupboard, or from the tin. No, none of them said it comes from the soil. It comes from the earth. I think last year, I over 10 years on, I asked the same question, and all of them said that the food comes from the soil, which was great. I can see the impact that we were doing. I could see that there was a positive impact being done. However, the parents did not share the same enthusiasm. Yeah, the parents did not share the same. In particularly the mums. Actually, the dads did, but the mums did not. It was just like, oh, your hands are dirty with soil. The child would give a mum a tomato, and I witnessed that quite a lot because one time, the little kids used to put tomatoes into the compost heap. Great, until I went to use all that soil later on, and we had like hundreds of tomatoes all over everywhere. So we had a lot of tomatoes, right? Loads. And the children were trying to share those tomatoes with the parents, and most of the parents weren't really interested, and I saw that happening over the years. So I saw a gap there that allowed me to then build a bridge. So I said, all right, cool. Let me invite the parents onto the garden. So we began by doing, mornings in the gardens, get the parents involved. It was very successful, but it didn't last. And again, the dads seemed to be the ones that were more like, yeah, let's do this. And the mums were like, oh, don't want to get my nails dirty. Not all of them, I'm not being funny, I'm just saying some of the mums. And then what I decided to do over COVID, and this is something very personal, if you may allow me to just be absolutely myself, and I'm going to be frank and transparent in everything that I do, because we're here to break barriers and we're here to connect with each other, right? So I was going through a really bad situation during the COVID, and as we know, during the COVID, a lot of things happened, and I found myself in a situation of domestic violence, and I didn't have no one to turn to, right? And that went on for a couple of years during the time that was locked down. And it was during that time that I was doing a lot of work in food. I was working with Black Roots, and we were doing a lot of work in, growing food to give away, right? And I somehow managed to get myself out of this situation, thank God, because it could have been my life. And it came very, very, very close to being my life. And, the cosmos, nature, God, whatever, got me out of that situation. So what I did was I turned to the soil. I gave my all of it, everything that I am, onto the land. And I started by I did that, I went on Instagram and I said, I'm shouting out all of my sisters. And that's what I did. To come to the land and come and reconnect yourself to the land. Because I realized something inside of me said, hey, you're not the same, you're not the only one that's going through this, number one. Number two, there's work to be done on the land. And number three, there's something that happens when we touch the soil that generates this energy of empowerment, and all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I can do anything, I'm superwoman, or I don't know, but something happens inside of you that makes you, that empowers you. So I wanted my sisters to also be a part of that connection, be a part of that feeling. And I have to say, this is where I was shocked to see that, the sisters responded. And on my first session, I had 33 women that came to me, and I was so shy. 33 women. I was so shy. Like, these people are coming to learn from me. Oh my God, these women are coming to learn from me. And that's when the doors opened, and they kept coming, and they kept coming, and they kept sharing. And 2 years on, actually, today is our anniversary, 2 years anniversary of Go Grow with Love. And I have to say, the love that I received from my sisters and the love that I received from everybody else, it wasn't something that I accounted for. I didn't expect that. So I know that there is hope. I know that there's a reason why every single person is sitting right here in this bed, in this bedroom, in this room, sorry, not bedroom. Very intimate. My apologies. In this room, I think that there's definitely, there's unity in numbers, there's power in numbers. I don't think that we are just a number. I'm not my NI number. I am Sandra Salazar, right? I have my nana. I have a child. I'm not a number, So what I say and what I do counts. I value myself. I value my sister. I value you. I value my mama. I value everybody. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but what women bring to the land, they bring love. They bring humbleness. They bring fire. They bring music. That's another thing that we do on the land. Yeah. We take our shoes off straight. First thing that we do, we take our shoes off and we go on the land, and it's just beautiful. Having all that mud on your feet, and then when you go home, you can't scrub it off, but it's fine. But so we bring, aside from you know, our intelligence, our wisdom, our ancestral knowledge, our heart, our caring. We bring joy, we bring hope, we bring a lot to the land and to each other, and it's important to have all women, everybody, not at the moment we're talking about women, but everybody to return to the land. I started with my melanin-rich sisters because I recognize that there's ancestral ties that need to be broken, and we need to let go of some of the, there's work to be done. Right, for me, because I know I need to do work within myself that is more yeah. So that's the reason why I invite my sisters to the land, because I want to give something back to them. But, you know, the mission is that all women should return to the land. Nature, Mama Selma says that to me all the time. The land is not owned by nobody. Land, you know, money ain't got no friends. Let me tell you that. You cannot take it with you when you're gone. You may think so, but you can't. And the land does not own or belong to nobody. 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 So there shouldn't be one organization that is bigger than the other just because it's got more land. The land don't belong to you. It don't belong to you. You don't belong to nobody. And furthermore, a lot of, sorry to say, I don't get to speak much often. And you know, let's be frank. A lot of the things, Europe mainly, is built on things that don't belong to Europe. That's right. So when people, I grew up in Portugal, my first 10 years in Portugal. 12 years I came to this country. I'm over 40, right? So I've been in this country over 30 years. And I recall in Portugal, people used to tell me, go back to your country. I'm like, great, where is that? You know, when we strip, we're the same. We're the same, we're made from blood, right? And bones, flesh. That's it. So I don't know if that answers your question. I can get really deep. Like I said, I don't really get to talk too much because of the land. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
We're incredibly rapidly running out of time. We have in 5 minutes left before we go to questions, but I realise, well, to the questions to the audience, but I really want to give both of you a brief chance to respond to some of the things you've heard, and maybe, yeah, I'll start with Lynn actually, you obviously went back to the land, or started at the land as a new entrant with Sandra, and I was just wondering what that was like, and did you see that as a feminist political act for the two of you to go into farming, or was it just a desire to tend the land, or how do you see it in a...
Yeah, it was definitely a desire to tend the land, and I think probably I'm going to talk from things possibly from a different perspective, not necessarily different perspective, but maybe different experience to the people that I share the table with. I think we're all coming from the same place, but I think how we go about it is very different. But I think really, to give you a kind of before I give you a nutshell of my own experience, I think I need to bring it right back to my personal story. So I grew up in Northern Ireland, and, you know, we're talking about the concepts of, you know, male dominance. I grew up in a Protestant family, in a very kind of staunchly Protestant culture, whereby the man goes to work, the woman stays at home, she makes, you know, she looks after the children. That was the model in which I grew up in. I also grew up in a very violent culture. I grew up in the Troubles. And I also grew up in a culture that really wasn't that, you know, upbeat about homosexuality, to say it. And it was a time when I was growing up and I was like, who do I like? Do I like women? Do I like men? And so when I was 18, I you know, kind of confided in a friend, and we kind of got the courage up to go to a bar in Belfast. And that was the first time I'd ever been to a gay bar, and it was also the first time I ever witnessed anybody getting shot. So I've really experienced a lot of, directly, you know, the challenges that I think we face as women. I think the direction that I'm going in, though, is one of positivity, because I then moved to England, and I became embraced by a culture who didn't, in my experience, care who I fancied or really care much about my, you know, who I identified as. I was embraced because I'd come from something that was so polarized, to come into a culture that just kind of went, you know what, we quite like you how you are, was incredible for me because I'd experienced the polar opposite. I then eventually ended up working in conservation, and the main, you know, experience that I remember was how many of my colleagues in the ranger world were women. You know, there was lots of men there, but there were so many women coming into the job, and that was amazing. And then I get to a point whereby, so I'm with my partner Sandra, and we decide to leave the southeast of England to buy a croft, a small farm in the Highlands of Scotland, right? And you're going, what are they going to think of us, okay? And we did have a bit of anxiety about it, but actually we got to the Highlands of Scotland, and we were absolutely, I can only say, hand on my heart, that we were 100% embraced by the local community. So I'm talking about farmers who were like, all they knew was farming, you know, in their 70s, you know, that's, you know, you do it like that, you don't do it like that, and, you know, you just have to work hard all the time, and that's just how you do it. We move in as a couple, as a same-sex couple, going, we're going to do regenerative agriculture. And I don't know what they say behind our backs, but to our faces, they are nothing but loving and caring and 100% supportive. And I've never lived in a community before whereby I don't need to see my neighbours, you know, every day. But if it's 12 o'clock midnight, and we have a problem, I have a list of numbers to call, and they're all generally old male farmers who will be there in an instant. They don't care about who we are, what we do. They respect us for just respect the work that we're trying to do. So, you know, I guess what I'm trying to show is that there's a lot of people out there who really do embrace, you know, who we are and what we are as well. So that's just a different perspective from my own personal experience.
And over to you. I'll just let you share whatever you would like in response to what we've been discussing.
Well, go to questions. You know, there's a very, very big similarity there about male farmers and male neighbours. I found that it wasn't really a problem from male neighbours with me farming, and I farmed on my own. I mean, I was a single mum for 15 years, and that only ended because she flew the coop and said, I'm not going through what you went through. But male farmers around you generally are incredibly helpful. It's the system that wasn't very helpful. It's the system that nails you to the floor. You know, they expect you to do... I kind of stepped into it, and I will come because I wanted to speak about the connections and the intersections, but I mean, I pitched up no more than that, just wanting to go off. I've inherited this farm, and I was going to go off and do this incredible adventure. And trust me, I mean, for anybody, when I do talk about the hardship, and people say, well, why don't you just sell and leave? Why would you? I mean, the joy of getting up in the morning and seeing the beauty that's around you. Certainly, the upside of what I've gone through can never, ever outweigh the challenges and the hardship that have come with it. But trust me, there has been a lot of hardship. You know, first of all, you are a single parent, and you're in this very, very low income side of farming, which meant that generally you were on farm assist, which is the equivalent of the farmer's dole. And you're still a woman, you're kind of working, you're doing your caring work, you're raising your child, you're working a full day on the farm. And I used to say to some of my men farmer friends, I'm really quite envious of you, because when you finish up the day, you go home and somebody's set the fire down, somebody's done the shopping, somebody's done the washing, and certainly like the place is a little bit warm. I walk in and the place is freezing and I've got to start chopping onions, you know. Really, honestly, I put on a huge amount of weight because I just used to buy a packet of biscuits at the shop. I'm growing all this organic food, but I didn't have time to feed myself because I was trying to be a mom and whatever. I got to the point with my daughter when she went to secondary school. Up on the farm, we were there for the first 3 years with no electricity. And she needed to do homework. In the winter, it gets dark at a certain time. So the only way I was actually able to ensure that my daughter actually had cooked meals, had a guaranteed thing of getting her homework in, and also getting her to school on time, because trust me, I am really not good at that. No, seriously, I'm good at loads of shit, but that's not one of them. I wasn't good at that. I sent her to boarding school. She was a weekly boarder in at Sligo, and that way I figured out, you know, that she got friends, she got cooked meals, she got male role models, she got kind of other role models. Because seriously, when you grow up with a really, really strong mom, I kind of figured out I wasn't doing her too many favors on that level either. But there I was, as I say. I mean, I'm working as a woman. I'm working as the main worker on the land as well. I'm kind of doing it on the dole. And then in Ireland, we have a really unfair system of farm subsidy payments. Now, I know since 2015, and I'll be speaking about this tomorrow, but since 2015 in England, you went to a flat rate. So the more land you've got, the more you get. We still on those graduated payments that were based on a snapshot of your productivity back in 2000 to 2002. Now, you mentioned earlier on today that even the food that you grow for yourself is a value that's not counted. But if you had to think about it, a woman that might have kept a couple of cows that fed her family, she gets absolutely nothing for her farm payment because she only had 1 or 2 cows over the year. Whereas a man or somebody who could go to and it is generally men if you go to the marts, who goes to the mart every week and flips animals, picks up some sheep, puts them on a piece of land there, goes and sells them the next week. All the animals that went through his books, put him out as a big productive farmer. So say, for example, my farm entitlements were worth 26 euros a hectare. My neighbors were somewhere in the region of 900 a hectare. But we have to do the same amount of work. It's called the Good Agricultural and Environmental Conditions, the GAIACs. So I still had to fence, I still had to keep my watercourses clean, I still had to do everything on this absolute tiny amount of money. And so as I say, I mean, there you are, you're one person trying to do 2 jobs with half the income. And it really kind of got incredibly difficult. And so all I did was figured out you need to work harder, which I think, yeah, if we're going to kind of go into the personal stuff now, I think that ended up with, well, I thought I'd pulled a muscle. I just couldn't get out of bed. I phoned my daughter and I asked her to come up and feed the sheep. So she was at university, she came up. It turns out I'd had a silent heart attack and survived it. So that I had 5 stents put in my heart, and but it had backfired into my legs, and I've got grafts in my legs. So the reality is when my grafts go, I'm going to lose a leg, okay? So I've been trying for the last 3 years to get the Department of Agriculture to speak to me about how to farm with a disability, allow me to destock from animals, because all of my grants are linked to animals. Please let me destock from animals. I can be a farmer with bees, with agroecology, with seeds. I can do a huge amount of stuff. And I mean, I'm smart, I'm educated, I'm hardworking, I'm whatever, I'm privileged, like just give me a shot. In 3 years, they won't speak to me. All right, I still haven't actually even had a reply from 6 letters, and literally, you know, it's just, the system just blanks you out. They don't want to talk about that. What they want you to do is those small farmers must just give up and let the productive farmers take over. And it's the type of farming that isn't what we want to do, you know? So, I mean, I'm not telling you this to kind of like poor me, but it was really funny that a couple of weeks ago I was at a really interesting meeting, and we were talking about reimagining the Irish Constitution from a feminist lens, and we had this amazing conversation. And at the end of it, as we're leaving, the one woman says, you know, it's such a pity, she says, would it have been great if we had somebody with a disability here? And I'm kind of going, you know, but I mean, like, seriously, I'm nearly 6 foot, and I'm, you know, you wouldn't expect that. The difficulty that I'm facing now is that to keep my grafts working and to keep my heart kind of going, I'm on what's called triple therapy. I take anticoagulants, blood thinners, and aspirin. So it just means that I bleed very, very easily, and that's kind of fine. I mean, certainly if you cut yourself, you go and sort yourself out, you know. I'm not that much of a bleeding heart, but when you dose your animals and you get hit in your midsection and you start bleeding internally and it goes septic and you end up in hospital with sepsis, your 75 sheep aren't worth your life, you know? But actually, according to the system, they are, because I'm not allowed to have my grants without them. So say, for example, my, what would you call it, the environmental grant, it's given on a 5-year basis. And if you pull out at any time, you have to repay all the years that you've been in. So basically, I started my treatment and ended up in this horrible position on year 5. I had to pay them back $25,000 to put my life back into a safe space. I couldn't do that. So actually, I ended up kind of like still working for a year, putting myself at risk. These are the type of things that we shouldn't have to do. Women, anybody, not just women, but nobody should have to be asking for their health or that to be acknowledged. So when we talk about the connections and the intersections between agroecology and feminism, you know, we talk about agroecology and regenerative farming definitely is the way to go. But we need to also remember that there's human stories. There's a backstory to this and there's the potential to it. We have to acknowledge both. We have to listen to people's stories. We have to actually kind of like make the time to find out who those neighbors are and be there for them. You know, be on that list that Lynn was talking about, that list that you can kind of pick up the phone and ring and say, I have to go away for a couple of days. Could you look after my animals? I was in hospital 2 sessions over 2018 and 19. I lost, my farm literally collapsed. And I mean, like, the reality is there's no labor out. We need to be talking about labor when we talk about land. We need to be talking about justice and solidarity and social movements. And when we're talking about the social movements, what type of social movements? We need to be there for each other. And that's what I'm saying. Just we need to go to the ground. We need to see each other. We need to widen our vision of what is out there. And it's just that we need to stop, what you were saying, Selma, we need to stop being there for each other. We need to stop standing up for each other and saying, you know, and it's been really, really difficult for me to talk about my personal stuff. I'm an incredibly private person. But when you look at it and you think, you know, if you go to a meeting and you say to people, I'm having this problem, and they go, none of us really have that problem. But you know what? Women are getting paid 12% less if they work, you know, the women and men in the Department of Agriculture or whatever. And you're looking at that and going, great, I mean, I'll certainly try and help out on equality of payment, but is anybody going to stand with me that I don't have to die on that farm? It's not fair, you know, there's no justice in it. So I suppose those are the intersectionalities that I'm wanting to look at. The ones where we listen to each other's stories and we decide that we have to have each other's backs. We have to help each other out, because we're never, ever going to change that system if we don't care enough to change ourselves. So I think that's pretty much that.
Wow. Well, thank you so much to all of you for sharing such personal and beautiful and moving and all these things, stories. I'm going to put it over to the audience for questions. At the back?
It's not a question.
Oh.
I'd like to make a small contribution in this.
Okay.
The stories.
Just wait for the mic.
Sorry. I'd like to make a small contribution in this marvelous gathering. Your personal stories are so wonderful. I spent most of my working life in Dublin, and I then moved to the northwest of Ireland. But 45 years ago, I employed the first woman driver in the organisation that I was in, and the unions objected to her becoming a driver. So in the last number of years, I've worked in various areas, including areas supporting women in getting them to understand how wonderful they are in terms of going for employment and so on, and what skills they had when they said to me, what skills have we got? And I told them they were the solicitor, they were the financier, they were the mother, they were the carer, they were all of these things in the home. So in recent times, I've been working on, I heard the stories about all the caring work that's done that's not paid for, and all of the work that both sexes do that's not paid for. So in recent times, I've been working on universal basic income for Ireland. And I think it answers Thelma's question in terms of a payment that should be made to people. Now, the focus I had on universal basic income was that everyone over the age of 18 should have €350 a week as a basic income. So, and with regard to one of the benefits of basic income is that it would reduce domestic violence, which figures out into your situation. But also, like, I mean, the value of basic income is so good in leveling the field for everyone. I believe that Ireland should be a pilot because it's small. It is 5 million people. So it could be easily a pilot to produce basic income. So that's all I want to contribute, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have other questions from the floor or from online? I don't know if Tara's, I can't see Tara.
We don't have online. We don't have it.
Nothing online.
No.
Anyone else from the audience?
Sorry, this is a bit random and also not a question, so I know it's really annoying. But it was just something that you'd said about women being carers usually in all capacities. And I'm moving into agriculture this year, doing a master's. But my current work is in music and technology. I've worked in 2 tech companies, and both times I've had my bosses saying, oh, can you work more on the culture of a company because, like, you're good at that? And that's not paid for. And it's always been a bugbear. And at first, I'd be, like, floating on the edges of it. But in the end, I'd just say no. And I'd even say no because you're not paying me for it. That's not work that's considered. But I've never heard anyone articulate it in the way that you did, especially when you said women that have benefited from the women's movement and get firing companies, but you're either with them or you're with the movement. And I just thank you for that, because it was a really amazing reflection and made me think about who I'm with. So, sorry, a bit nervous.
Yes, you know, thank you so much for saying that, because, you know, our work is not acknowledged. And, you know, the basic income is a good example of that. If we all have the basic income, we'll still be doing the work and nobody will notice and nobody will acknowledge it. We want that work acknowledged. We want it as the important work of the society. Can I say that, you know, at the beginning when we began in the 1970s, you know, we went to the UN to get our work acknowledged, and it took us about 10 years at the United Nations that women's work of caring in the home, on the land, and in the community must be measured and valued and put in all national statistics of every country. We have the situation in Africa where the women produced 80% of the food that was consumed in Africa, and they were considered not working at the ILO. We changed that. But it took years to change that, and it is really crucial that those of us who bring every human being into the world, introduce them to the new world which they didn't know before, worry about them, protect them, including from the police or from racist this or that, or from people who want to tell them what their gender should be. You know, those who want to control our children, and we want to say that we do the work. We're doing it all the time. And we want that work acknowledged. We want the society to say, mothers are working. Every mother is a working mother. And we want to say also, as women from Thailand said, I take as much care of the soil as I do of my family, because it's her family that will give her the food out from that soil that will make them well and whole and strong. And they have had to fight, you know, to get that. They have had to fight to keep their land because they had to go to the court because a multinational had it illegally. And they killed 4 people, 4 of their people, 2 women and 2 men, but they fought and they won, and they're there with their land, and they're in charge, and they have redone the land, and it's theirs. And that's the struggles that women have been involved in all over the world, which we are part of. We are part of this international movement. You know, we must support ourselves, but we must know what kind of support we need. And the value of our having an international movement and of having an income is that we are finally involved as people who are on the land, who are working the land, and those who are not, we can be together. The South can finally be acknowledged as giving the leadership, as in Andhra Pradesh and at many other places, giving the leadership to the women in the North. Why not? Why shouldn't we acknowledge the leadership we're getting from Andhra Pradesh and other places? They're moving into Africa now. And all about, we have experience that we want to share, and they have experience that they want to share. You know, the All African Women's Group meets at our center, and many of them were farmers at home, and they haven't got the chance to do it here. But we do what we can to help, and we work together. By the way, I did want to mention that there were, if I don't mention, women with visible and invisible disabilities. We have an organization of women with disabilities, and we have, oh yes, GWAD, the Global Women Against Deportation. We have a massive anti-deportation campaign in London and throughout the UK, and the women are fantastic, and women and men obviously, but the women, you know, we know women who do work in the South. When the boats come, they meet the boats, they feed the people, they give them a bed to sleep in, they give them water. They call it their beach work, and they're saving lives and welcoming people who need welcoming. Isn't that fantastic, caring work? We want it acknowledged. We want it paid for. That's what we want. That's what we're. But you know, the care income is different from the basic income because we want the payment for the work that we are doing, not necessarily to do the. We have to have the support of a wage, and it's very different from having an income where you don't help at all. I'm not against people getting money. No, don't misunderstand me. Everybody should have money. But we should have money for the work that we're doing. Otherwise, we will never get the help we deserve. That's what matters.
Thank you so much for everything that you've said. This is the kind of talk that sets a fire in all of our hearts and makes us want to run out of this room and do more than we've ever done before for gender equality and for bringing a feminist viewpoint into both masculine cultures and feminine cultures and just culture in general. What can we do?
One other thing? Sorry.
Yeah, you can always say one more thing, Selma. Yes.
I want to say one other thing. The self-help groups, women's organizations, self-help women's organizations in Andhra Pradesh have disciplined the police to come against domestic violence and rape. We haven't got that in London. We haven't got that, as far as I know, anywhere. But those women, based on what they do on the land, but based on their organization, based on their ability to get together and work together in groups of between 10 and 15 people, not more, then not everybody has a voice if it's too big. But then they meet together. Muslim, Hindu, and other religions, they work in their own group, and then they come together, and they've changed each other, and they've changed themselves, and as a result of that, they've changed the whole society where they are, and they are growing. And that is what we want to help happen, and we want it to happen to us as well. That's what I think.
Really quick. So imagine a future where men all get into goddess culture and men all read the books and men all do the stuff and that's just normal. Can you all go down a row and just tell us one little thing that you think could help us toward that future? Because that is what I have a hard time imagining how we get from here to there.
I need that because I don't have a thing, but I just wanted to say something quickly as a person who doesn't identify as a woman, but who strongly resonates with the ideals of feminism, that I think one of the ways that we can envisage a future where we incorporate men and other genders into this conversation is by changing the language and not talking about men and women, but talking about these human values of care and love. Like, these are universal human values that we all have inside us, and it's the system of it's a heteropatriarchal system which has completely fucked us all over and enslaved women to be doing work that capitalism doesn't value, but that's not work that's inherently invaluable at all, and it's not work that men or anyone should not value, if you know what I mean. So basically, let's talk about human nature, human values of care and love and solidarity. Scrap the gender, and then it's for everyone. It's not just for women, it's for all of us. And that's where we have to go, I think.
The women have a slogan, which I wonder what you think of.
I don't know if the ask was that we went down and asked some other, but maybe if...
Can you rephrase rephrase my question for me? Because I feel like you understood what I'm saying, but you can help me find the right language to ask it in a different way that suits a better future.
I like that. I like that. You can understand it anyway. Yeah.
Do you know the answer is quite simple? We wake up every single day and we choose to be the force that goes out into the world. And every single day, lead out with that. Lead out with the heart that cares. Lead out with the heart that kind of gives. Lead out with the heart that kind of like sees everybody for themselves. And hopefully, in its own way, you actually change just by leading by example. And even if it doesn't change, at least you live your own truth.
That's true.
You know?
I have to say as well, if you don't mind.
I've got something to say briefly as well. It's just to sort of drop the individualism from it, because I think what can happen, it can get a bit like, you know, what should men do? What should women do? The same as the binaries that you're sort of challenging. It's kind of, it's a systemic problem. Capitalism is totally intertwined with patriarchy, is totally intertwined with racism and colonialism. All these things are, and so really we need to be working across a broad justice movement and equality movement and, you know, reproducing life and care and all of those things that you're saying, human values, and that if we start to individualize problems, or that's one of the problems, that's kind of what society is trying to do. So we need to think systemically, and whatever justice work we're doing, see it all as interlinked. You know, it's all connected. So I guess that's what I want to say.
Yeah, like I mean, what I wanted to add to that is that, you know, in Africa we have a saying that I'm sure you all know, it takes a village to bring up a child, and that's exactly it. We're not by ourselves. We have sister over there that can, you know, pick up the child. They have dad over there. You know, it takes a village. And with that said, you know, the child learns the principles of life. Like my son, supposedly, you know, we have the organization, but he does everything. He's my finance manager. I have to pay him, of course, but, you know, he does the books. He helps me design the flyers. I mean, he's what I live for, and what I try to do without think is not put my pressures onto him, right? And let him be a child. But it takes a village, because I can't do it by myself. That's it.
We're going to have to bring it to a close. So, we've run out of time. I'm so sorry. We've run out of time, but
Can I make a small comment?
You got 60 seconds.
Silent partner here.
yeah, pass it up to Nina.
I'll be very brief, and it's on the language and what you raised. We obviously agree with every gender, every identity being included, absolutely. But I think you have to keep one thing in mind, which is that the work and who is doing has to be recognized. And you don't move away from that by just making everything gender neutral. You know, making women and the work we're doing invisible doesn't help. It's like what the guy said about the basic income. There's a difference between a basic income and a care income. You have to acknowledge the work, and when the work is seen as something more valuable, you'll see that the men will be much more interested in it than they are now.
I just think, yes, I definitely do not mean to make things gender neutral. That's not what I mean at all. Okay. I think, importantly, we're all in a struggle against patriarchy, and we have to acknowledge that certain people within our heteropatriarchal capitalist system, and that's not just men, but it's also including race, it's including disability, it's including the whole spectrum of diversity. All of us who are marginalised in our current heteropatriarchal society need to come together and demand that we're heard and that we have our rights and blah, 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 and all that stuff. So in the current system, certain people are being disadvantaged and others are being propped up by it. But let's not point fingers at those who are benefiting. Rather, let's look at the systemic issues and address them, and keep it away from just indulging in more kind of separateness and binarisms and, like, you know, race or whatever it is. Let's just talk about the issue, the systemic issue that we're all facing, all of us, you know, men included.
Right, we have to bring it to an end. Thank you to all the panelists for being amazing, and we can carry on with the conversation if you want to informally. Thank you.